Dennis Rodman's autobiographies are the journey of a troubled caterpillar who finds his way to being a confident and beautiful butterfly, only to succumb, much like Narcissus, trapped by his own reflection, except instead of by the pool, he's on the cross. Okay, this one's going to be a little different because I've got 4 autobiographies. I'm talking about 4 books at once. Going to move pretty quickly through them and kind of talk about Dennis Rodman as a whole. This isn't going to really contain any spoilers, but I'm going to tell you what I think about each book. And there's a turn here because I'll tell you right now that I enjoyed some and others I very much did not. I'll read verbatim a review that I wrote on the very last review. I wasn't even writing reviews for books when I read the first 2, but by the last 2, I had written some reviews. So, anyway, the first one came out in 94. Second one came out in 96. Third one came out in 97. The last one came out in 05. Now, Rodman is credited with writing these 4 books as one more that came out in 2013, but that was a children's book about a bull who just kind of wanted to be himself and be accepted. I do not have that book, but out of all these books, that one might be pretty cool. At least it'll have a good message. Yeah, it's very different. The 4 we're talking about are biographies. They are autobiographies as he has written them or has had a hand in writing them. With all of these books, he has also had additional help, which most people writing their biographies, autobiographies, do. They usually have the help of a writer as well to assist them in that, and he has a different person assisting him in every book. As time goes on, that person has less and less say, I think. Or Rodman doesn't accept their help as much. There's some other things that have happened as well. But, yeah. Let's kind of get to it. This first one, Rebound, the Dennis Rodman story. This one, again, came out in 1994. It was written with the assistance of Pat Rich and Alan Steinberg. And I enjoyed this a lot. I guess I should backtrack 1 second and say that I love Dennis Rodman. This is why I have 4 Dennis Rodman autobiographies. I still like the spirit of Dennis Rodman. I mean, I've never known him personally, so it's weird to be like, I like him, I don't like him. But in the past couple of years, there's definitely some things that have been questionable. I like his character. I like Dennis Rodman as a character. I like a lot of things about him. He's one of my favorite NBA players, but it's not because of just skill. But I mean, like most players in the NBA, I mean, basketball just has an opportunity to express so much individuality. Dennis Rodman did that on and off the court, right? The thing that I love about him, he was very much himself. He didn't want to care what people thought anymore. He wanted to just express himself the way that he wanted to. They painted him as this bad boy and whatever. And I think at times he leaned into that characterization that they gave him. But the thing is that he just wanted to be himself. And like the character that grew to be Dennis Rodman in the NBA as we mostly remember him now. Part of that is also shaped by media and him leaning into a character. But he also just like did a lot of things he wanted to do because he wanted to do them. So I guess my love for Dennis Rodman has a lot to do with him just being an individual and wanting to be himself. So, back into this first book, Rebound. On my Goodreads, when I looked back, I gave it a 3 out of 5 rating. Again, I read these a couple years back, like 5 or 6 years ago, and or maybe 6 or 7. I remember that I enjoyed the book. I remember some of the story in here. I would say that this is one of these, out of these 4 autobiographies, if you like Dennis Rodman or you want to know more about him, this one's going to be essential. It tells a story that isn't really told in the other ones. And and it gives his background basically in college, playing college ball, and kind of him navigating that in his early life and everything else. Like, right, this is the first one. It should cover his early life the most, and it does. It also just tells like a really cute story of him living with his family and like basically billeting and living at their house for a bit and then not, and like having a friendship with this young child at the time, and just like being like inseparable and just finding friendship in this place where he wasn't being accepted, and it was really difficult for him. So even though he's getting to live out or begin to live out one of his dreams, again with hard work, like with determination and hard work, and that's the other thing I like about Dennis Rodman is his work ethic, but he's still not having a great time here and not being accepted for who he is, and he ends up having this friendship, and not just with the child, but with the family as a whole, and having to go through some adversity even because of the friendship, right? Because he was around that family, there were things that him and the family both had to navigate that were just at the judgment of other people. And this really, again, one of the things I love about him is that he does what he wants to do and screw other people. But I think you see a lot of heart in this book, and again, you've got a lot of that backstory. It's also just well written. I think it frames him as what I think at this time he probably truly was. It seems authentic that he was a very grateful, humble, hardworking, kind person, despite what people may have thought and what they put on him for a character. But it seems to be a real, it just seems very authentic and somewhat charming, but in like a really gentle way, I guess. And it's just very sweet. It's a very sweet book. I would say this is an essential for sure. Let's move on to the one that most people are familiar with, which is Bad As I Want to Be. It stayed on the New York bestsellers list for a little bit. And I mean, he was around this time interviewed by Rolling Stone. So here we've got a different writer that helped him, Tim. Oh, I'm gonna mess his last name up. Tim Keown. I don't know how to pronounce it. And this book is extremely well written as well. This also I gave a 3 out of 5 on my Goodreads. I didn't have a review written, so I couldn't go back and reflect or look at how I reflected on the book right after I had read it. But I do recall enjoying it. And again, this is Rodman in like peak Rodman times, or the year. This is like the beginning of peak Rodman, right? Like we're talking about 1996, being on the Bulls, and just like that craziness. I would say that this has a lot of tea in it, but again, it's given by Rodman himself, like the account of his own life. And so he talks about relationships that he had, some difficulties, some messes, some mistakes that he's made, things that he's learned. It is kind of like that tell-all book. It does talk about his basketball life as well, but it talks about his personal life a lot. And again, it comes off very authentic, but I will say this comes off more raw. Not as sweet as that first one, but again, you're getting a lot of information here. You're getting a lot of stuff that you would be looking for in a biography, right? You want to know about Dennis Rodman? I would say this is another one that you should pick up. I think these first two are all you need before you venture into the other ones. These first two, Rebound and then Bad As I Want to Be, that's all you need. If you want Dennis Rodman, that's all you're going to need, because after that, things just the wheels fall off, right? Like it's a mess, and I'll get into that. But again, there's a lot of tea in here, a lot of Rodman celebrity at a certain level is peaking here, beginning to, and his character is developing, and this is still him, I feel, being very authentic, and still has a certain amount of humble in him. It's candid and raw, but again, a lot has happened since the days of Rebound, and he tells you about it. And again, there's some somber moments here, and I think that again, if you are a fan of Dennis Rodman, you want to know more. These two, Rebound and Bad as I Want to Be, that's as far as you need to go. Then we get to Walk on the Wild Side, which is only a year later that it was published, I believe, if the information here is correct. Now he starts to play with the format a bit of the book, different fonts. He's got more pictures and stuff in here. Just kind of like pages dedicated to like one quote. Just changing up, putting things in bold, changing the typeface and the font size and stuff. He starts to play with that format a bit. And I believe this is kind of when he had a little more control, and he didn't give his assistant writer, I'm not going to say a ghostwriter because we know that he's writing with someone. It's right on there. Michael Silver. I'm not sure how much he was involved or not. There's some things in here and later on in the other book, the last one, that kind of discuss that maybe Rodman took more control and he maybe didn't like how he was being represented by other people in the media or other writers he had hired in the past. So this is much more Rodman in here, but this is where the wheels start to fall off. The humble brag comes in here, and like I believe that there's a certain era of Rodman that was very grateful and very humble, despite also like it's hard work and dedication and discipline that got him to where he is, and he knows that, but he also is like just grateful for being in that position. And that isn't really apparent anymore. So Walk on the Wild Side, just like it just seems to be like riding off the coattails of himself on these earlier outings. And like again, like it looks like it's gonna be bananas in here. Like, okay, Rodman's okay, like just by the cover, and again, like you've got him playing around with the format of the book a little bit more. But I there's just not a lot in here that you didn't already know. I feel like the other two are rich with information and stuff you would want in a biography, and you're getting a lot of backstory and in depth. And this thing doesn't have a lot of depth. And again, the humble brag starts out here, and he starts to really. I don't know why his perspective has changed so much and the quality of the writing has changed as well so much. Again, he's got different writers, but I think that you can see more of him maybe in this time writing, and also things have changed with him. I think he starts to get a little bit bitter and starts to martyr himself along with that humble brag, because he talks about some things that he does that I think he does well. He starts to talk about certain things that he's done really well, but he doesn't he's just tooting his own horn. He's just talking about like how real he is, and it's like how much can you talk about how real you are? How much can you talk about how people you know what I mean? He just goes on and on and on and on, and it was a pretty quick read, but at the same time, it was too much. It was too much. We're going to get to the last one. I Should Be Dead by Now. So this one came out in 2005. The most recent autobiography that I believe there is. And a lot's happened since then. So I kind of wish that like we didn't have this or the one before it, and then we had one now, depending on how authentic it was. But so much has happened since this one. So anyway, I Should Be Dead by Now with Jack Eisenhower. Yeah, it's gone. Like I said, the wheels start to fall off on the other one, and here, it's just no good. He does play with the formatting again a bit. He has these things called reality checks. Let's see if we can find one. He just like interrupts himself to have like a little box. Oh, there's one. We got like a tribal tattoo design. Reality check. Don't drink and go live or live. It's kind of out of context, so I don't know. It doesn't have it doesn't play as much with like text as the one previous, but I think that you could take out a lot in here. And again, like, oh man, like it just doesn't need to exist. It just doesn't need to exist. There's a lot of overlap. There's not much new information here. and the quality of writing is really, really poor. I almost dropped it. Oh my goodness. I'm going to read the review that I wrote, because for the last two, I ended up writing some reviews, but I'm just going to read the one I had for this. Yeah, I finished reading this in 2017, it looks like. Rodman has always had odd things in his books to increase his pages, where text changes font and size for emphasis or these reality checks, but they're just disruptive and redundant. The majority of the book is just a big humble brag, again. If all unnecessary components were taken out, this book could have been about a quarter of the size. With every book he writes, it seems he has more and more control and less editing is occurring. This is just a mess. The things I like about Rodman, this book didn't ruin for me, although it sure as hell tried hard. The writing is atrocious, but the character of Dennis Rodman is still intriguing, albeit for more reasons than before. I think he showed more of his hand than he intended to here. So that was my review after I had read it 4 years ago. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that specific book, or what else more I can say. But, I mean, like I said, it didn't ruin Dennis Rodman for me. But if he put out an autobiography now, I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't read it if it was free. I just don't. He is still entertaining. Like, he's just done some interviews and some other like funny little things through like Vice or whatever, and he's still entertaining. And I think he tells good stories, especially in a video audio format. But his writing, again, with him having more control and wanting more control and whatever, like, it's just not good writing, and it became redundant and a big humble brag, and I was like, man, you're like trying to ruin this for me. So the last two, you don't need. The first two, if you're interested in Dennis Rodman, I'd say go for it. They're well done. I felt good about it. And I think that just knowing, like, everything you know after that, with social media and everything else and what he's been up to, I think you kind of get the picture without needing to read these other two books, especially because the last one was 05. But from 97 to 05, there wasn't a lot of new information in there, I felt. Like, not a lot happened. And he just still comes off like a martyr and just humble brag, and just like, it's just the king of the humble brag is how I think of him now. So if you are a fan, are these books important? Again, I think the first two would be important for understanding where he came from and just kind of who he was at the time when he was like peak celebrity. I like that character. I like that spirit about him. And I think that over time something's happened and he's lost his way. And I don't know if he's found his way back yet or not. Maybe that's why he hasn't written anymore, because he's like, I don't care. I'm just going to be me. And maybe he's living his best. I mean, he is living his best life. But I mean, maybe he's doing awesome. And maybe he's much more positive and legitimately humble than he was before. I don't know. So the first two, I would say they're on the middle of my shelf. I mean, they're not incredibly important books in the scheme of books, but if you want to understand or know Dennis Rodman, I think they're good. They're going to stay in the middle of my shelf. However, the other two, I'm just taking right off my shelf. Another good reason for me, like another good outcome, I should say, for doing these reviews is that I get to kind of look at, like, I read these books before I was doing YouTube stuff and podcast stuff. So I had written reviews, but it wasn't enough at the time to make me think of taking them off my shelf. And now, yeah, they can't stay. They got to go. They're just taking up room. I'm never going to read them again, and I would again suggest that nobody waste their time reading those latter two. That's it. Dennis Rodman Autobiographies.